She walks into the date like it's a stage and he's the audience. In her mind, he should be grateful she even showed up. Free dinner, cute photos, a story to tell her friends. But then something happens she wasn't prepared for. He tells the waiter, "Separate checks, please." And just like that, her whole script falls apart. This is what happens when an entitled woman finally meets a real man. A real man isn't dazzled by bare minimum effort wrapped in beauty. He's spent years building himself, career, discipline, confidence. He's not desperate for attention, and he's definitely not paying for validation. So when she shows up 30 minutes late, glued to her phone, ordering the most expensive thing on the menu, he doesn't chase. He observes, he takes notes, and he opts out. She calls it rude. He calls it a standard. Entitlement thrives on men who are afraid to say no. But a real man isn't scared of being alone. He'd rather drink a quiet coffee by himself than bankroll someone who sees him as an ATM with a pulse. That's why his first date is simple. Coffee, a walk, something low pressure. If she rolls her eyes, complains it's cheap, or demands dinner and bottle service, he doesn't argue. He just mentally files her under, "Not for me." Because he's not auditioning to be her sponsor. He's screening for a partner. Online, she's been told she's the prize just for existing. Hundreds of likes, endless comments, girlfriends hyping every standard, no matter how unrealistic. But offline, in front of a man with boundaries, that programming collides with reality. When he calmly says, "I'm looking for a partner, not a dependent," there's no manipulation that works. Not guilt, not anger, not flirting harder. He's seen it all. And here's the twist. The moment he walks away, the mask slips. The "I don't need a man" energy quietly turns into, "Why didn't he want me?" That's the part no one posts online. Real men are not punishing women. They're correcting the market. They're refusing to trade money, time, and peace for drama, entitlement, and ego. When entitled women finally face a real man, they don't just lose him. They lose the illusion that their attitude was ever enough. She shows up late on purpose, not because of traffic, not because of work, because in her world, making him wait is proof he cares. If he's still sitting there after 20 minutes, that means he's invested. That means she's in control. She finally walks in. No apology, no explanation, just a casual, "Hey," like she's the one doing him a favor. He stands up, smiles politely, and sits back down. No drama, no lecture, just a calm, steady presence. She orders quickly, not what she wants, but what signals status: the steak, the cocktail with the fancy name, dessert to share, even though she hasn't asked if he wants any. Between bites, she's talking more about herself than with him. Stories about her exes, about the men who couldn't handle her standards, about the trips she made guys take her on. He listens, not impressed, not offended, just taking it all in. Because a real man doesn't react, he evaluates. In her mind, the script is simple. Be pretty, be slightly difficult, be unimpressed. He'll work harder, he'll chase, he'll pay. Then she goes home and tells her friends, "He was obsessed with me." Except tonight, the script changes. The bill arrives. The waiter places it neatly between them. She doesn't even glance at it. She lifts her phone instead, checking her notifications, already planning the TikTok she'll make if the date is bad enough. He reaches for the bill, opens it, and then looks up at her. "Let's split it," he says. Silence. For the first time all night, she actually looks him in the eye. "What?" "Let's split it," he repeats, calm, almost casual. "I pay for women I'm serious about. First dates, we both invest." The room suddenly feels different. Her cheeks get hot. All that fake confidence starts to crack. In her head, alarms go off. He's broke. He's stingy. He doesn't know how to treat a woman. Out loud, she says, "A real man would never make a woman pay on a date." He smiles, not mocking, just done. "A real woman wouldn't come here expecting a stranger to finance her night," he replies. "This is a first meeting, not a sponsorship." There it is. No shouting, no insults, just a boundary. And that's what entitlement hates most: quiet, unapologetic standards. She feels something she hasn't felt in years: rejection that she can't control. She can't guilt trip him. She can't shame him. She can't dangle sex because he doesn't even seem interested in getting that far. He's not chasing validation from her. He's protecting his energy from her. That's the difference. When an entitled woman meets a real man, the date stops being a performance and becomes a mirror. His no reflects everything she doesn't want to see: her lack of respect, her transactional mindset, her belief that showing up is enough. And for the first time, she realizes he wasn't lucky to be there with her. She was lucky to get a look at what a real man actually looks like. And she blew it. She goes home furious, not because of the bill, not because of the date, but because for the first time in her life, a man didn't fall into line. She storms into her apartment, kicks off her heels, and immediately calls her best friend. The rant begins instantly. He made me pay. He didn't compliment me. He didn't chase after me. But underneath that anger is something she won't admit: confusion. Because the men she's used to dealing with behave differently. They apologize even when she's wrong. They overinvest even when she underdelivers. They fight for her attention even when she treats them like an option. They stick around because they're afraid of losing her. But this man, he wasn't afraid of anything, and that's what scares her. The next day, she posts a vague rant on social media about low-value men and bare minimum masculinity. Her followers hype her up, comment hearts, call her a queen, tell her she deserves better. It restores her ego for a moment. But later that night, when the apartment is quiet and the notifications stop buzzing, she replays the date in her mind. Not the parts she told her followers, not the exaggerated pieces she used to protect her pride. The real moments. How calm he was. How grounded. How he didn't need her approval. How he never tried to impress her. How he never got flustered, even when she pushed boundaries. Men she's used to can be manipulated. Real men cannot. She remembers the way he looked at her, not with desire she could control, but with clarity she couldn't shake. It felt like he could see right through the facade, through the attitude, through the performance. He wasn't evaluating her appearance. He was evaluating her character. And deep down, she knew she didn't pass the test. The worst part? She didn't even know she was being tested. A real man doesn't test through games. He tests through presence. He watches how she treats the waiter, how she talks about other people, how she handles disagreement, how she reacts when things don't go her way. Every entitled behavior she thought was normal, he interpreted as a warning sign, and he's not interested in managing a problem he can simply avoid. Days later, she considers texting him, something she would never normally do. Not to apologize, her pride won't stretch that far, but to see if the door is still open. If maybe he wasn't serious. If maybe she misread the situation. Before she sends anything, she checks his Instagram. He looks busy, focused, traveling, working, training, smiling with friends, living a life that clearly didn't pause when she walked out of it. She scrolls more and realizes something uncomfortable. He lives a life that doesn't revolve around women at all. He doesn't need female attention to feel valuable. He doesn't need validation to feel strong. He doesn't need entitlement disguised as femininity. And that's when it hits her. She wasn't rejected because she wasn't pretty enough. She was rejected because she wasn't valuable enough. A real man doesn't care about beauty he can't respect. For the first time in years, she isn't angry at him. She's angry at herself. Because real men aren't rare. They're just done entertaining women like her. She spends the next week pretending she's unbothered. Outwardly, she posts perfectly curated photos, motivational quotes about knowing your worth, and clips about how women should never settle. Her friends hype her up, telling her she dodged a bullet, that he was insecure, cheap, intimidated, or secretly broke. But deep down, beneath the noise, a quiet discomfort grows. Not because he rejected her, but because she can't shake the feeling that he saw something in her she's been ignoring for years. The truth. Suddenly, every interaction she has with men feels different. The compliments from strangers don't hit the same. The attention online feels shallow. The men who once made her feel powerful now feel predictable, too eager, too available, too easy. Because once you meet a man who isn't impressed by surface-level value, it becomes painfully obvious how many men are, and how few real men there actually are. She starts replaying the date, Not the drama, but the details. How he held eye contact when he spoke, how he never raised his voice, how he didn't try to one-up her stories, how he didn't brag about money or status, how he stayed centered the entire time, completely unfazed by her attempts at control. She remembers feeling something unfamiliar that night, something she misinterpreted as annoyance. It wasn't annoyance, it was intimidation. Not because he was controlling, but because he couldn't be controlled. The realization sits uncomfortably in her chest. She spent years believing she was the prize, that any man was lucky to take her out. She believed her attention was currency, her beauty was leverage, her attitude was confidence. But in front of him, none of that mattered. He wanted depth. He wanted contribution. He wanted character. And she brought entitlement disguised as standards. For the first time, she begins to wonder if all those past relationships ended not because men couldn't handle her, but because she gave them nothing worth handling. This internal conflict grows when she starts noticing other women. At a cafe, she watches a couple laughing, genuinely. The woman is kind, warm, relaxed, no posturing, no demanding. She sees the way the man looks at her, with admiration and peace. At the gym, she sees a woman motivating her boyfriend, cheering him on, offering support, not criticism or conditions. At the office, she sees a woman bring coffee for her partner on break, smiling like she actually likes him, not just what he can provide. And she finally sees the pattern she's ignored for years. Quality women get quality relationships. Entitled women get replaced. This realization is uncomfortable, but it sparks something she hasn't felt in years: self-reflection. She starts asking hard questions. What do I actually bring to a relationship? Would I date me? Do I treat men like partners or like providers? Do I offer value or do I just demand it? She doesn't like the answers, but unlike before, she doesn't run from them, because meeting a real man didn't just expose her entitlement, it exposed her potential. For the first time, she stops performing and starts evaluating herself. Not to impress him, not to get him back, but because she finally understands something no one online ever told her. Real men aren't the prize. Real relationships are, and she's never actually built herself to be part of one. She wakes up one morning and realizes something subtle has shifted. The anger is gone. The embarrassment has faded. The defensiveness has loosened its grip. What's left is clarity. Not the kind she can brag about online, not the kind that makes for cute quotes or aesthetic posts, but the raw, uncomfortable clarity that comes when the excuses finally stop working. She starts noticing patterns she once refused to see. All the strong, independent talk she used as armor wasn't strength, it was fear. All the "my standards are high" speeches were just entitlement dressed up as empowerment. All the men she said weren't enough were actually men she never bothered to understand. Looking back, she realizes she never dated men. She dated what they could do for her. And now, with the noise drained out of her mind, she begins to see why the real man unsettled her so deeply. He wasn't evaluating her looks, he was evaluating her mindset. For the first time, she confronts a truth she's never dared to ask. Would the kind of man I want ever want me back? The question rattles her. She has spent years curating her appearance, perfecting photos, crafting a lifestyle online, but she has never once worked on being a partner. She expected emotional maturity from men while offering emotional chaos. She wanted leadership from men while refusing to be led. She demanded effort while offering attitude. That night at dinner wasn't just a failed date, it was a mirror, and the reflection wasn't flattering. So she starts making small changes, quiet changes, changes no one will applaud, no one will validate, no one on social media will notice. She apologizes to a coworker instead of doubling down. She tips more generously and listens instead of scrolling. She compliments other women instead of competing with them. She starts reading instead of ranting. She picks a man for chemistry, not clout. She stops treating relationships like transactions. She doesn't announce any of this. She doesn't post a transformation caption. She doesn't demand credit, because real growth doesn't seek an audience. Weeks later, she unexpectedly bumps into the real man at a cafe. He nods politely. She smiles, genuinely, not performatively. She doesn't flirt. She doesn't overcorrect. She doesn't pretend she's someone else. For once, she simply shows up as herself, without entitlement, without expectation. He notices the difference, not dramatically, not romantically, just enough to offer a respectful nod before returning to his work. And that's when she understands. He wasn't meant to be her partner. He was meant to be her wake-up call. She leaves the cafe without regret, without resentment, and without the ego that once dictated her life. For the first time, she feels something powerful, not from a man, but from within herself. Not validation, not superiority, not control, but readiness. Readiness to truly love, readiness to truly give, readiness to truly connect. Because meeting a real man didn't break her, it rebuilt her, quietly, painfully, necessarily. She didn't expect the changes to feel this natural. At first, every step felt forced, like she was trying on a version of herself that didn't quite fit yet. But with time, something shifted. The new habits felt less like effort and more like alignment, not with what society told her to be, not with what men expected, but with the kind of woman she secretly wished she had been all along. Part 5 begins not with a man, not with a date, but with her alone in her apartment, sitting in silence and realizing she feels peaceful. For the first time, she isn't performing. She isn't calculating her worth through attention or validation. She isn't constructing a personality around aesthetics. She isn't chasing an image of the ideal woman social media sold her. Instead, she starts asking herself something she never asked before. What kind of partner do I want to be? Not what she wants to receive, what she wants to give. It's a radical shift because entitlement is rooted in taking, but growth is rooted in giving. She starts setting goals, real ones, not the typical boss babe, level up, glow up slogans, goals that build character, not clout. She works on emotional discipline. She learns to speak with intention, not attitude. She practices vulnerability instead of weaponizing independence. She learns to listen without waiting for her turn to talk. She invests in herself, not to be chosen, but to be worthy of choosing. One day during a lunch break, she finds herself giving relationship advice to a coworker. Gentle, self-aware advice she would have never been capable of a year earlier. She hears herself say, "Good men don't hate strong women. They just need space to be strong too." And the truth of it hits her harder than he ever did, because now she understands something the old her never could. A real man isn't intimidated by a woman's strength. He's repelled by her disrespect. A real man isn't scared of standards. He's allergic to entitlement. A real man doesn't avoid commitment. He avoids one-sided relationships dressed as empowerment. And she finally sees the line between high standards and high maintenance, the line she used to blur constantly. Months pass. She doesn't chase men, but she no longer chases validation either. She goes on dates, different now, calm, curious, present. She listens more than she performs. She asks about values, not income. She appreciates effort instead of expecting extravagance. And the men she attracts now? They're different too. They're grounded, confident, respectful, emotionally stable. Men who know their worth and don't need to prove it. One evening, during a quiet walk with a man she genuinely enjoys getting to know, he looks at her and says, "You're different, in a good way. You feel peaceful." And she smiles, not coyly, not strategically, but sincerely. Because this time, she's not trying to impress. She's simply showing up as who she has become. Later that night, she thinks back to the man who unintentionally started all of this. The one who said no when she expected yes. The one who refused her script. The one who held a mirror she desperately needed. She no longer feels anger. She no longer feels embarrassment. She feels gratitude. Because without him, she would still be confusing entitlement for empowerment. She would still be mistaking attention for value. She would still be losing good men and blaming them for leaving. She realizes now the real man wasn't the ending of her story. He was the beginning. And the woman she is becoming, strong, kind, grounded, self-aware, is the woman who won't just attract a real man, she'll keep him. Part 6 begins not with conflict, but with a question she never expected to ask herself. What does a real partnership actually look like? For years, she imagined relationships as a stage, her standing in the spotlight while a man did the heavy lifting behind the scenes. Providers, protectors, planners. She was taught by friends, influencers, and endless online echo chambers that a man proves his worth through effort, money, and sacrifice, while a woman proves hers simply by existing. But now, with her mindset evolving, that fantasy feels shallow, immature, outdated. She begins to crave something deeper, something she never knew she wanted before: balance, mutuality, contribution, reciprocity, not 50-50 in a transactional way, but both people bringing their full selves, their strengths, their support. She starts paying attention to couples around her, not the glamorous ones on social media, but the quiet ones in real life. The guy who surprises his girlfriend with lunch at work, the woman who leaves encouraging notes in her boyfriend's gym bag, the couple sharing chores without keeping score. Two people growing, not competing, not performing, not manipulating, just growing. For the first time, she understands why the real man's refusal cut her so deeply. It wasn't disrespect, it was a boundary, and she didn't have any of her own. She begins setting her own boundaries, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. She stops tolerating men who only want her for her looks. She stops dating for attention or status. She stops overvaluing superficial things and undervaluing character. She stops rewarding bare minimum effort just because it flatters her ego. And surprisingly, these changes don't push men away. They filter the wrong ones out. One night, she's on a simple date at a small cafe. No fancy menu, no pressure, just conversation. The man across from her isn't trying to impress her with money or status. He's sharing who he is, his goals, his fears, his past mistakes. Old her would have rolled her eyes at such simplicity. New her is captivated, because honesty, she's learned, is far more valuable than luxury. She finds herself speaking differently too. Softer, more thoughtful, more intentional. She isn't listing demands, she's sharing values. She isn't performing confidence, she's embodying it. She isn't trying to control the interaction, she's participating in it. For the first time ever, she feels herself becoming the kind of woman a real man chooses, not because she manipulates, not because she demands, but because she contributes. Weeks later, while journaling, a habit she never imagined herself developing, she writes something that surprises even her. I want to build, not be worshipped. And in that moment, she fully understands what changed. She no longer sees relationships as a marketplace where men audition for her approval. She sees them as partnerships requiring effort on both sides. And with that clarity comes something she has never truly felt before: readiness. Not the performative readiness she once flaunted online. Not the conditional readiness based on what a man can provide, but genuine readiness to meet a real man as an equal, not as a burden, not as a princess, and not as a taker. She finally sees the truth. Real men don't avoid relationships. They avoid entitlement. And now that she's shed that part of herself, she isn't just attracting better men. She's becoming the kind of woman who can walk beside one. Part 7. The return of the real man. Months have passed since her transformation began. Quietly, slowly, imperfectly, but undeniably. She no longer chases validation, nor weaponizes independence. She's grounded now, not because she found someone to stabilize her, but because she learned to stabilize herself. And that's exactly when life throws her a curveball. She runs into him again. Not at a cafe this time, not in a rushed moment, but at a professional seminar. She's there for growth, not networking, not attention, not the social pretense she used to hide behind. She's seated in the second row, notebook open, genuinely absorbing the speaker's message. He walks in mid-session. She notices him instantly, not because she's longing, but because something in her recognizes the man who unknowingly changed everything. He doesn't see her at first. He's scanning the room, calm and self-assured, as always. Same presence, same grounded energy. When his eyes finally land on her, Something unexpected happens. He pauses, not in shock, not in confusion, but in recognition, not of who she was, but who she's becoming. After the seminar, he approaches. No tension, no unresolved bitterness, no ego, just two people who once collided at the wrong moment and have unexpectedly found their way into a better one. "Good to see you," he says, genuine and steady. "You too," she replies. And it's the truth. She's not performing this time. No dramatic hair flip, no engineered charm, no strategic aloofness. She's simply present. He notices the difference. Of course he does. Real recognizes real. They talk, not about the past, not about the infamous date, not about who was right or wrong. They talk about growth, goals, books they're reading, habits they've built. She isn't trying to impress him. She's not trying to win him. She's not trying anything. She's being, and that's what strikes him most. The woman in front of him isn't the entitled, guarded version he met months ago. This woman listens. She contributes. She laughs, lightly, naturally, without the performance she used to rely on. He can feel it. She has shifted. At one point, he says something that almost startles her. "You seem lighter, more yourself." She smiles, and this time the smile is real, not a social tactic. "I guess I had some growing up to do," she admits. It's vulnerable. It's honest. It's something she never would have said before. He nods, not judgmental, not superior, just respectful. "We all do." They leave the event walking side by side, not as a couple, not as potential lovers, but as two people meeting again without the masks they once wore. He doesn't ask for her number. She doesn't ask for his. But neither of them walks away disappointed. Because the point of their story was never romance. It was evolution. As she gets into her car, she realizes something profound. She no longer needs him to validate her growth. She no longer hopes to win him back. She no longer measures herself through his approval. Instead, she feels grateful. He wasn't the man she lost. He was the lesson she needed. And now, conclusion. The bold truth. In the end, her journey wasn't about winning a man, proving a point, or reclaiming some imagined throne. It was about confronting the mirror she'd avoided her entire life. The moment a real man told her no, she finally faced a truth she had never dared to acknowledge. Entitlement isn't power. Self-awareness is. The man she once tried to impress, outmaneuver, and extract value from didn't reject her out of cruelty. He simply operated on a level she wasn't prepared for, one rooted in standards, clarity, and emotional maturity. A level she claimed to deserve, but had never earned. And instead of breaking her, that moment rebuilt her. Not overnight, not perfectly, not publicly, but steadily. She became more intentional, more grounded, more capable of giving, not just receiving. She learned that real partnership requires real contribution, that strength isn't loud and confidence isn't combative, that relationships thrive not because one person demands more, but because both choose to become more. And when she crossed paths with him again, she didn't seek validation. She didn't hope for a second chance. She didn't try to rewrite the past. She simply stood in the present, stronger, steadier, and finally aligned with the woman she was meant to become. Because the truth she discovered is this: a real man isn't the prize, a real partnership is. And becoming a real woman, one who gives as much as she receives, is how you earn it. Her story doesn't end with a fairy tale romance. It ends with something far rarer, far more valuable: growth. And growth is the one thing entitlement can never give you, but the one thing a real man can inspire if you're brave enough to face yourself.